Well, welcome to another episode of Rich Politics. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I'm so glad you're here today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as you can tell, I'm in familiar surroundings here. I'm at home again today, not in the new studios as I promised to all my viewers and subscribers. You know, I was promising new studios, but lockdowns have put a halt to it. And so I'm here in my home. So you might hear some background noise like my dog, my rabbit, or the ducks outside. But apart from that, we're alive. We're doing well. We're surviving lockdown. Well, my guest today is a good friend of mine, someone I got to know during campaigning in 2019. He's a publican. He owns a pub called The Crown Inn in the beautiful landscape of Herefordshire. Matt Slocombe. Matt. How do you pronounce your surname, Matt?
Slocombe, come on, Taylor.
Matt Slocombe. And he joins me now. And we were talking, Matt, when we earlier this week a little bit about some of these lockdown measures and the impact that it's had on the hospitality industry. And of course, we've seen it across the board, not just with pubs, but cafes and restaurants. But you've experienced it firsthand because you own and run a pub. How has it been for you? Because these lockdowns, surely they must be taking a toll on you now.
They are, Rich, and the problem we've had is, whilst I appreciate, and the last thing anyone wants to take, we are not taking this lightly. We know the impact this disease has had on a lot of people, and two of which, in fact, live, right next to the cottage of the pub. I've got, elderly mother and father-in-law, and we've been trying to keep them as safe as possible. But way back when, you remember that? Remember March? Crikey!
Well,
almost a year ago.
Yeah. Well, do you know? It is nearly a year. And I was thinking that this morning. But you know what struck me? It was like, when in March we kind of understood it. Everybody got it. We all submitted it to it, and it was like, we get it. We'll do it. But since then, I just feel that people are just fed up. We're frustrated. There's a call for these measures to be looked at because a lot of people saying they don't work. I mean, such mixed messaging. I mean, it must have been really tough for you guys having to close, open.
This is the thing. I mean, we're used to how do you put it? Challenging environments in the pub trade. That's certainly something we've been used to. I've been doing it 20 odd years, so I'm well aware of that. Flatten the curve, close us down, get the NHS ready, all that. We were all absolutely on board with that completely, and we used the time very wisely, and there was grant aid, and the pub we got some grant. We invested pretty much every penny of that into our building to actually try and future-proof the hospitality, the business we run, and we've got some accommodation now. And again, as we came out of lockdown, people were sensible. We put all our health and safety, we did all our risk assessments, and we were up to speed with everything, and it was all going very well. Eat Out to help out, incredible support. And I honestly, in 20 years, I can never remember feeling as positive in that August time when the sun's shining. That helps, doesn't it? The sun's out, the sun, everyone's having a couple of ciders.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a beer garden in Herefordshire, right? For a cold pint of cider in the summer. I get it. I've been there many times. I know.
You're bang on, mate. And it was brilliant. And and again, amazing support. I think Rishi Sunak needs a lot of praise for what he did. And then it was as though, I think there was that one afternoon where the brothers Grimm, Whitty and Valence put up I call it the graph of death, because that's the only thing you can call it. It was everyone's going to be dead by Christmas. I think that was genuinely, if that had come true, we'd all been dead by Christmas. And at the same time, they said, oh, and by the way, pubs are going to close at 10. And everyone in their head just went, pubs, graph of death. And it was as though, honestly, we'd had our legs cut off overnight. It was remarkable, and we've never recovered.
I find it extraordinary that the hospitality industry was hit in particular and seen as something they wanted to lock down, when you consider the transmission rate was very, very low, and still is. I mean, the scientific evidence behind shutting pubs is nonsensical. It makes no sense at all. Now, I was criticised a lot on social media for you just want a pint in a pub, you don't care about people's lives. It wasn't about that. It's about people's livelihoods, because not just people like yourself who run pubs, and that is your main source of income, your livelihood, but also it's the community. It's where people get together. It's at the heart of every single community, especially here in Wales. The pub culture, it's their religion, it's their church. They go there after work on Sundays. It's where they exchange ideas, where you support one another. My goodness me, I've been counselled more in a pub than I have by any professional counsellor, if you know what I'm saying.
I count myself as a professional counsellor, Rick. It's what we do. And this is what... we made it as safe as we possibly could. And this is what I think we've become so risk averse now. Otherwise, we wouldn't put our socks on, because it's dangerous. You might pull your hamstring. Well, everything's got an element of risk in. That's what life's about. And the benefits that will more than offset, in my opinion, the health to people's mental well-being, and the community, like you say, the community spirit. But Britain, and I mean, Britain was built, the pub is the core of what we stand for, really. It's where people have pleasant arguments, actually.
Of course, yeah.
A lot more pleasant. An argument in a pub is a lot more pleasant than one on social media, let me put it that way. And people come together, their communities are supported, people who are lonely can get contact with people, and it's a vital part of it. And bearing in mind as well, the supply chain into pubs are very much locally based. So local food producers, local farmers, local drink suppliers, that's what we've always prided ourselves on here. And the Crown, and so those are people. The knock-on effects enormous, and we know everyone's been affected by this. But there was a different way to do this, and after the first few months, they needed to have changed tack. They had a chance in July and August to have changed tack. We know how dangerous this can be for certain people, so let's look after those people and let's allow everyone else to keep the economy going, because it's all well and good protecting an NHS, but if we haven't raised any tax or income for the government, there won't be any funding for the NHS.
Absolutely. And I think, the public purse can only extend so far. And Rishi Sunak, as you've already pointed out, has been very generous with it, but it's got to be paid back at some point. I mean, Matt, thinking of pubs here in Wales, I mean, we had this pub closure more or less, and if you remember, slightly different to England, over the border there. And you're just over the border because I'm in beautiful Abbey here. So I know. And I can look at Sugarloaf Mountains to my right over here as I look out my patio doors. It's lovely where I live, so I'm very fortunate. But a lot of people don't have what we have. They're in flats in city centres, in some of the more urban places, and it's very challenging for them when the government now is talking about stricter restrictions. They're talking about that in Wales, and I know in England the same as well, across the UK. In fact, I read an article in the Daily Mail this week that it's very unlikely the pubs now may not open for a further 7 months, well, at least until about May. Have you heard that? I was in the Daily Mail yesterday. I was reading it, an article they talked about that it might not open till May. I mean, can you believe that's... I hope it doesn't happen, especially for people like yourself and many others as well. But I just could never imagine a world where this would be happening right now.
No. I mean, Richard, like you say, when I came down in Blyden, when we were walking around there, you couldn't just see then even, where did we meet? We went into the pub across the street. Where are all the people who are helping you? You went into the pub to meet. And to think that might be closed until May. Well, I think there's a bigger issue there, actually, Richard, and that is the one of this terrible habit that seems to be have crept through the whole last year is, we're not sure what we're going to do. Let's put a few ideas out in the newspapers, see which ones get the least backlash, and we'll go with that technique. And that hasn't been a way to govern a country. It hasn't been a way to lead. And that is being very, and the stress that's causing people, like you've already alluded to, we are very, very fortunate. Okay. I think we'll be okay. We'll keep our heads down. We'll get through this. There are people out there who haven't got the Herefordshire or the Abergavenny countryside on their doorstep, and they haven't got the fresh air around them, and they're stuck inside somewhere. And it beggars belief. The thoughts of what's happening behind closed doors at the moment is very scary for this country.
It is, and the mental health impact as well. Of course, you mentioned earlier, as we were talking there, that you've had to diversify, so you've changed your property a little bit to adapt to a different kind of service, I suppose. And for a lot of people, they've had to do that. I mean, back in March in the first lockdown, my friend, who was a landlady of a pub, one of the oldest pubs in Wales, the Bush in Blaenau, actually, one of the oldest pubs in Wales, had to shut its doors, and it's never going to open again. It was really sad. I went to see her when the final day we went there and everything else, and it was really, really sad to see. And she was breaking her heart. It was a reality for her. But of course, she didn't have the means wherewith to diversify the size of the property and etc. But many publicans like yourself are having to turn to different means now, aren't they, for their livelihood and make some changes to their business, Matt?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we which one were there? So first lockdown, we didn't do any takeaways because we were just hands-on and building and decorating and everything else. And in November, we did do a small amount of takeaway. And again, you've got to balance that between the cost of getting staff back in and that sort of thing. And I think we've had a week or so now just to get our head around everything again. And we're going to be starting doing, just my wife and I and the family will do sort of Friday night fish and chips and a Sunday roast takeaway. But we're lucky because we're a big enough site we can diversify. And this is, I think, goes back to all of it. The young lady there with the pub in Blaenau, she's got that building can't be anything else. It's not big enough. It only works as a drinking pub, people packed in there. And that's historically how it's always run for probably however many hundreds of years. And this is what it all boils down to. So, for example, in Wales there, you've got, you're not allowed to buy this from a shop, that from a shop. The only boys who are doing well out of this are the big boys. Okay,
of course,
Amazon, all the big supermarkets, everything else, the small retailer, the small gift shop, the small bespoke greengrocer, they're the people who are being affected. The small person is being affected by this. And that's something that's going to have really, really big, thoughts about it moving forward, is how these small businesses, which are the backbone of the country, this is what makes Britain great, is small businesses, and they're the ones that are most affected by this.
Some of these draconian measures in Wales, they're thinking about doing the same in England. I know, when it comes to non-essential goods being sold. Well, we've had that. I think the pubs were told back in the 4th of December, you can open, but you can't sell beer. That's what they were told during Wales, which, imagine you being told as a publican, mate, you can open your pub, but you can't sell beer. I mean, I just, the sense of it, it blows my mind. So you can go in a pub and drink coffee, but not beer. I mean, whatever. I mean,
well, it's not a pub then, is it?
No, it's not. And I think, these draconian measures, sometimes they just lacked a bit of common sense for me, and they never back it up with any scientific evidence. They never tell you why they're doing it. They just make these decisions. They don't even debate them at the Senedd here in Wales, and certainly, Westminster can be the same time. Sometimes they legislate, pass laws, and then you're like, well, what's going on? And these are small, medium-sized businesses that are going up the wall, that are never going to recover people's livelihoods. We've talked about mental health. Suicide is on the increase because of a lot of the pressure people are under. And I think sometimes the cure, is worse than the actual disease itself. And it's really sad to see what's happening. And I don't know what the silver bullet is to all this. The vaccine is out there now. We know that, Matt. But, I've heard ministers say, well, we're still not going to go back to normal. I'm like, well, you promised us once we get the vaccination.
What's the point then?
Yeah, the health minister here in Wales, Vaughan Gethin, said, listen, the vaccination, he was asked a question by a journalist, ITV Wales. He said, will we go back to normal once the vaccination's been rolled out? He went, no. I mean, what do you mean no? What kind of hope is that giving to a country, to a people, if we can't go back to normal? Do you know what I'm saying, Matt?
I think, Rich, you're absolutely right. And there's a few facts and figures. And again, we push into these figures, and there was big spikes and people were taken early, and that all of that's horrible. No one's making any light of that. But if you look at a print off from deaths in this country from 1990 to 2020, I think 1993, 583,000 people died. Okay. And in this year just gone, just under 600,000 have died. Well, there's 10 million more people in the country now than there was in 1993. So I don't remember locking anything down in 93. I can't remember much from 1993, by the way. I was at university, but
I was a very naughty boy in 1993, so we won't go.
We won't go there, Rich. We won't go there. But this is the point I'm making: is that where has the reality check that we've got so down a tunnel that we've lost sight, the rabbit hole I've been referring to. We've gone so down that rabbit hole. We can't now see, for the light for the tunnel, and say we are way past the cure being worse than the disease. I think that happened sometime as soon as we were more restrictions at the end of the summer. But I think worldwide as well, this is quite a remarkable stat. As many people last year, within a few thousand people, died on road traffic accidents in the planet as died with COVID. Or certainly of COVID. And again, it's this they're being so obsessive when they say died with, died of.
Yeah, the problem is, see, when you quote figures like you just have, Matt, which they're published out there with the ONS and a whole range of figures. You get called a COVID denier, and I've had people close to me that have died of it, and I've had people say to me, Rich, you don't care. I do, because it's affected my life and some of my friends' lives. I've been to funerals, sadly, of people who have died not with COVID, not from COVID, if you know what I mean, all the confusion. And I think the sad reality is it's as if people are scared now to question any of these decisions the government are making. And we shouldn't be, because we shouldn't just believe what mainstream media tell us. Alternative media outlets that are out there on Facebook, and well, at the moment they're getting censored, as you know, and across Twitter with Trump being censored and all that kind of stuff. It's as if they're trying to control the whole narrative and trying to say, well, this is what you should believe. We're going to condition you to believe this, and you daren't believe anything else. And, I'm finding there is an agenda being played out at the same time, Matt. Are you finding that as well?
Well, I definitely do, Rich. And I wonder, hold on, we're supposed to question. That's the absolute fundamental of the oldest democracy, or one of the oldest democracies in the world, is that we do question. And we always keep questioning, and we have debate. And we don't call each other names when we don't like the result of that debate, or we don't agree with that person, and we still have a cider with them at the end of it. And I don't know where that's gone, because that level of like you said, you're called a COVID denier or COVID idiot or whatever. I think that we've experienced this before, Richard. When we were walking the streets with a little Brexit Party badge on us, and we were called all sorts of names. Then it's like, no, I'm doing this because of democracy. I'm doing this because of, and we've gone so far away from why we're having the chat. Why are we dissenting? We're not dissenting. We're questioning. I want always to question. And if it, if things go terrible, fine. Show me what's happening in these hospitals. Then, if it's so bad, then let's see it all. And then we'll all go, okay, fair enough. That looks awful. But the obfuscation and the twisting of it, you don't know what to believe anymore, and then you're in a dangerous place.
I think what was difficult as well, Matt, during the first lockdown in March, and I've seen some things on social media, is when people posting videos on platforms like TikTok and Twitter of them nurses dancing and messing about in hospitals. I thank God for the NHS. Don't get me wrong, doctors, nurses, all the work they do, A1. But the difficulty is when you start seeing stuff like that on social media, and we're being told by the media hospitals are overwhelmed, and there's not enough bed space, and the NHS is in crisis both in England and in Wales. But then you're seeing stuff on social media that tells you a completely different story. The two don't add up, Matt, do they?
No, they don't. And Richard, I think if you went back again from the year 2000, our great friends at the Guardian newspaper have written an article every single winter about the crisis in the NHS and the lack of this and the lack of that. And how long, isn't it the same every year? Now, if it's not the same, I don't know. I'm a publican. I don't work in a hospital. I've got friends who do work locally in hospitals, and they're telling me a different story to the one that we're getting from the press and from the government. So, things have got very clouded, haven't they? And very, very clouded indeed. And any form of questioning is now shouted down to a point of thinking, Mr. Orwell wrote a book about this, and some of it is just starting to ring true. And you touched on platforms censoring other people. Well, then, if you're a platform, you don't censor. If you censor, you're a publisher.
Absolutely
and then
right.
You are responsible for everything on that site. So. Yeah, again, have we got another hour? We can chat.
Well, I know. I mean, I was looking at. I mean, how can any platform they call themselves, ban a sitting president of the States of America? No, I'm not a great lover of Donald Trump, right? No, I'm not one of those who's a Trump supporter, right? So it's not about that. It's about the fact that they're able to silence and ban and censor someone who is a sitting president of the States of America, but yet they've got Hezbollah and all kinds of terrorists on their platform posting hatred about blowing up Israel and killing Iran, and they got all these things, and they allow this stuff to go out on social media, and yet they ban the sitting president of the States of America. It doesn't make any sense unless, of course, there is something, a play behind it. There's an agenda behind it. And I think we're going to see more of this censoring. I know that talk radio were taken off YouTube just briefly a couple of weeks ago. A number of accounts have been suspended. A number of people have been losing followers on Twitter, especially those who are centre-right politics. I've noticed that this last couple of weeks. And there's something going on, isn't it? And it seems as if there's this liberal woke left agenda that's trying to silence us all, call us far-right extremists, and try to condition us into their way of thinking and comply to that as if it's the normal. And we know it's not. We have to fight against that, Matt, don't we?
We do, Rich. I've been boring my friends with a long time now. Something with a bit of a cricket analogy. I call it this ever-shrinking corridor of correctness.
Yeah.
All right. And it's this little tube that we're now supposed to look through. And if any of our ideas are anywhere around it, then we're shouted down. We're called this, that, and the other. We're called an ist of some description. And you must go back to this little center light. That's the only thing you're allowed to be in. You've got to be in that tunnel, and if you're out here, you're cancelled. And that is really, really dangerous. And as you said, if the Ayatollah Khomeini can still have a Twitter account, bearing in mind that he bans Twitter to everyone who lives in his country,
I know it's nuts.
Then come on, guy. And like you say, Trump's. I'm not, but you respect the office if nothing else, and we are in dangerous times when that starts happening. We really are.
Well, we certainly are, and hopefully, people like yourself and many others out there will continue to be a voice across social media. You can follow Matt on Twitter, by the way, folks. Follow his journey as well, and the Crown in. Give the guy a follow. Really appreciate it. Matt, listen, our time is almost up. We could talk a whole lot more. I'm definitely going to get you back on the show again because the idea is short, sharp, punchy here on YouTube. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. Don't forget to subscribe. Matt's So what's the future looking, if you can see a future now, for the pub industry? What would you say to Boris Johnson? What would you say to the government right now about pubs, and what is the road to recovery for you guys?
Brilliant. Well, I'd also like to make it known that if you're told off for taking a coffee on a walk and that constitutes a picnic, will that be enough for a substantial meal when we come out of lockdown? That's another question altogether.
You heard it here first.
2020, mate, is a Scotch egg, isn't it? That's all we need to know. Look, we're going to get our head down. We're going to be ready and raring to go, because do you know what? Britain needs its pubs, and when we're open again, people will come back. I'm absolutely certain. And we can put this behind us and get on with a good few pints in the local.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end the show. Britain needs its pubs. And, you know, if you're not following either, Save Our Pubs on Twitter, on social media, they're a great bunch of guys, groups come together, really pushing to save our pub industry. We want our pubs back. We want to get back. I can't wait to pop over to the Crown Mat for a pint. It's over the border, I know, so we'll have to check with Drakeford if it's all right first.
Yes.
If the Emperor lets me out, and looking forward to it. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. And as you can see, I'm in my home again. But next week, hopefully, we will be in the new studios. Depends what the Welsh Government decide to do on lockdown. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time on Rich Politics.